And so here is WT class. Now what we're talking about here is the assignment. This is a sample assignment. You can tell it's an assignment because of this icon here. It's got the pencil and the ruler. If you notice, everything else has different icons. So this is just something, I know that was helpful for me because if I needed to go edit an assignment, I could kind of use that icon as a visual cue to know, okay, what am I editing now? What is this? And so this is what an assignment looks like. Here we have the title. I've attached instructions. I've attached an example. It's always good to provide a ton of details and possibly an example. This is going to go a long way for students. That way they're not turning in low quality assignments and they're not bombarding you with questions because you've answered them all within the assignment already. And then so here we have additional instructions, and I'm going to show you how you can create your own assignment. And I just wanted to show you kind of what that looks like so we know what the end product is going to be. And so the way you start off is always make sure your edit mode is on. If it's off, you're going to lose this action bar here. That goes away and you can't add anything. So once we make sure that's on, then you can get to all the options where you add stuff within your course. And so we're going to go over to the action bar here, and we're going to select the second option that says assessments. So under assessments, we want to create an assignment. Now don't get confused with the Turnitin assignment. There is a way you can create a Turnitin Dropbox, which runs papers through plagiarism, through a plagiarism detector, and it gives you a report. So we're not going to go through that today. If you're interested in that, let us know and we can definitely tell you more about that. But we're going to stick with the basic assignment that is built into WT class. There also is an option for plagiarism detection in this, and we're going to talk about that. So when we're ready to create an assignment, we'll just click that third option. Actually, I want to create my assignment as a Unit 1 assignment. So you want to go to whatever place in the course that you want to place the assignment in. So I'm going to get a little more specific. I'll create my assignment in this Unit 1 folder. And so here, if you wanted to create a super fast assignment, you could just title it, scroll down, enter in the points possible. How many points is it worth? 100 points, hopefully. And then you could just hit submit. And that's it. You could create a fast assignment. Maybe you have a face-to-face course and you're going to give students details in your class. That's all you would need to put in there and it would be available. But I think you probably want more details. So let's kind of go through this. I'm going to call this Unit 1 assignment. And then you can also change the color of your assignment link. We'll just make it green and hit apply. And then here in this section, you may want to add some instructions. Now, just note that anything you put in this box, it's going to be contained right below that icon I showed you or right beside it. And so if you put a ton of information on that, it may take up a lot of screen space. And that's not very user-friendly to people on tablets or mobile. So just kind of keep in mind that depending on how long you make this, students are going to have to scroll through that. So you may just want to put some basic guidelines in here and then maybe use the attachment file here, and I'll get to that in just a second. But you might want to put something like, please read the attached instructions and example carefully. Submit your assignment file to this Dropbox no later than, and you can tell them the time and date. And you might want to specify that it's for Central Time, and then let them know to attach the correct file and click submit so their submission gets marked for grading. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So you might just want to keep it plain and simple. So I'm just going to put, please submit here by, we'll say June 8th at 11:59 p.m. And, you know, I'd probably put make sure to hit submit and attach the correct file. It's always good to remind them. They sometimes forget and will do submit incomplete files or the wrong file. And so it's always good to place a little more information there. But so now we're going to talk about the assignment files here. So in that first example I showed you, I attached a Word document of instructions and a separate file for examples. So what you can do is you can attach a file here or within the instructions. So you have the attached file option here. I like to use this one because it places it right below the title and it just makes it clear that you must view these attachments. So you can click browse your computer and attach your files there. And so I think I have my sample documents here. We can do instructions. And you can add several files if you had a lot of information for them to cover. Articles, you can upload all of that there. And if you need to, you can also change the names within here, and you can mark do not attach for these as well if you maybe attached the wrong file. So I'm going to say don't attach that, but at least we have some instructions there. And then here on the next section, here's where you can put your due date. Some faculty don't like to put in due dates because then they have to update them every semester, but it's kind of a good thing to put in because if you can actually have your assignments marked late. So Blackboard, if you put in a date here and it comes in after a specific date and time, then Blackboard will let you know, hey, this came in late, and then you can decide, do I want to take points off, or do I really care if it's late or not? But that can give you a visual cue if something was turned in late and when it's time to grade. This is also good to put in a due date because students using the Blackboard app, they love using the app because any due dates that you put in here specifically or on your tests or on discussion boards, they get a notification on their phone, and students love that. So if you have time and you don't mind updating these dates every semester, I highly recommend that you place a due date there. And so the way you would do that, you would just click the check mark. It'll automatically put today's date and time, but of course you can use the calendar wizard to select a date in the future. And if you're familiar with times in Blackboard, if you want for students to be able to have until the very end of the day, just scroll all the way down and click end of day, and that gives them till 11:59 p.m. on this day. And that way they don't get confused with 12 a.m. Well, does that mean it's on the 27th, or does that mean it's on the 28th? So we highly recommend that you use the end of day if you're going to give them right up until midnight. And then so once you enter in your due date, you can also go into your grading section. So this part is super important. So this is one of the sections, if you were to hit submit right now, it would say it can't create this assignment for you because you did not assign points possible. So here you're going to assign how many points are available for this assignment. We highly recommend that you use out of 100 points, especially if you're doing a weighted grade book, it just does the calculations better. If you start using partial points or 5 points or 0.5 points, weird things start happening with the calculation, and it's not always beneficial for the student. So try and use 100 points possible if you're using weighting. If you're a points person and you're just adding a total of 500 or 1,000 points every semester, then it really won't matter how many points you put on there. In the next section, you can add rubrics. Now, rubrics are great for grading. They make grading super simple. It's a little work on the front end, but then you can just click, and it'll assign a certain amount of points, like especially if you're grading papers. You may be reviewing the introduction and the body and the conclusion. So you can kind of look at those areas. You can add areas or criteria that you want to assign specific points to. And did they do a good job? Did they do a poor job on that? So you can create your own rubrics and then attach them here. We don't really have time to go over how you create those, but if you're interested in that, just know that option is there and we'd be happy to walk you through that. And then the next section in the grading are about submission details. So this section here, it's defaulted to an individual submission with only one attempt. And so the great thing about the assignments tool is that you can now create group submissions. So if you wanted, you could create a group assignment. If there's 5 students in every group, you can set up this Dropbox and one student can submit for everybody in the group. And the great thing about that is now when it's time for you to grade, you're not having to grade 5 different papers. You can put all of your feedback into the one submission, and then everybody in the group has access to that feedback. So that's a really cool feature if you decide to do group work. If you need help with that and setting all of that up, or you have questions about how it works once it comes to grading and maybe putting people into groups and assigning groups, just let us know and we'd be happy to go over that with you as well. And then next, here is the number of attempts. So whether you're doing an individual or group submission, how many attempts do you want them to get? It defaults to 1, and what that means is that they only get 1 shot. They can upload 1 file and hit submit, and that's it. Well, sometimes this becomes a little problematic because sometimes students are in a rush, or if you're like me, you look at your paper and you proofread it, it looks great, and you hit upload, and then you go and double check, and then you find this glaring typo. And then, so if you only have 1 submission, 1 single attempt assigned, then you can't go back and correct the file or upload the correct file. And so this is one of the settings that you may want to adjust. So what you can do is select multiple attempts or unlimited attempts. When you select multiple, you can type in how many you want to give your students, and that way that might ease the amount of emails you get in your inbox saying, oh, I messed up, can you please allow me another attempt? Or you can just do unlimited attempts, and then students can upload to their heart's content. So it's just up to you. But either one of these, when you select these, then you get this new option, score attempts using. Because you're dealing with multiple submissions now, you have the option to either keep the last graded attempt, the highest grade, lowest grade, first graded attempt, or average grade of attempts. And so this is helpful if maybe you're doing one Dropbox for like a paper, and maybe you want them to submit a draft. And then maybe you're grading their draft, and then you're going to grade their final, and you want to average the two. Or maybe you're allowing students to make an additional submission or two because you're going to allow them to make corrections and improve. Well, then you might want to keep the highest grade if you're allowing more than one attempt. I don't know why you'd want to keep the lowest grade, but that option is there as well. And so it defaults to last graded attempt, so it'll just show the last file that was uploaded. So it depends. Do you want to see every single attempt? If you have it set to unlimited and you go to grade, it's going to show that student who just made a bazillion uploads, and you'd have to view all those attempts. So probably your best bet is to do last graded attempt if you're just doing one assignment, no drafts. And then the next tool here is going to be really helpful, especially if you're doing papers. So if you're doing unique responses, like maybe students get to pick a topic and then get to write a paper on that, then you might think about using this plagiarism tool called SafeAssign. And so if you want SafeAssign on, you can check that box. And what that does is once a student uploads their paper, it'll check through other sources. It'll check through any other papers that have been submitted into the SafeAssign database, and it'll check through some online sources as well. So it's super helpful for students because you can opt for them. Here it says allow students to view the SafeAssign originality report. And so if you check that, students can actually see their paper submission and check that originality report and see, portions of their paper highlighted, like maybe it's too similar to something on the web. And so it's nice for students to have that. It allows you to make sure that they're not plagiarizing, or it allows you to kind of address that beforehand. I know a lot of faculty who love to do just a Dropbox that's worth 0 points, and they tell their students, before you submit to the final Dropbox, your final paper, make sure you run it through SafeAssign, and you take care of all that plagiarism, and you deal with that before you submit to the final Dropbox. And so if you're doing drafts, you may not want to check this, you may want to check this last box. So here it says if you want to exclude submissions from the databases. And so if you're doing a draft, and maybe you're allowing 2 attempts, submit your draft here and then submit your final later. You may want to exclude that first submission so that it's not in the database. Because if you have students upload a draft and you include it in the database, then when they submit their final, it's going to flag it at 100%. So if you're doing a draft, you may want to exclude it and then create a separate Dropbox where they can upload the final and then actually include those papers. And the great thing about this database is that whatever's uploaded here for whatever classes in the entire institution, they all get placed in here. So that way people can't recycle papers, or people can't say, oh, well, I did this paper one semester and you can try it this semester. So that's a great tool, especially if you're using, if you're having essays. Now, this doesn't work that great if you're just maybe if students are writing up summaries, or you're asking them a specific question and everybody's going to have similar answers, or like about a process and everybody's going to be using the same textbook or the same article, because then it's going to pick up a lot of those same phrases and it'll flag them. So again, this is more for unique papers if you have students select their topics or specific essay questions and things like that. And then next here in our, whoops, I'm just going to put unlimited attempts there. And then so our next section are some grading options. So you don't necessarily need to do anything here. There is anonymous grading, and then there is delegated grading. So if you had several TAs and you wanted to assign specific grading groups to specific TAs, you could do that here. You can also grade anonymously, but I'll show you how to do that once we talk about grading. And then let's talk about display of grades. And so here, you may not want to make any changes to this section. I know there's a ton of options here, but just know that here's where you can change how the grade displays. So let's say if it's out of 100 points, do you want them to see the score that you type in or a percentage of the score, the percentage format of the score? It just depends on how you want students to see that. Also note that there is a secondary display, so you can already set that. Like maybe you're doing out of a certain amount of points and you don't know what the percentage is. Like if it's worth 50 points and they got a 35, what is that in terms of a percentage? Is that an 80% or it's definitely not 100%? So you can set that for yourself, and just know that the secondary display is only visible to you in the gradebook. The primary one is visible to the students. And then here, it's automatically default to include this assignment in the Grading Center calculations. So this is going to create a column in the gradebook, and it's going to factor into whatever calculations you have set up for your grades. So that's defaulted. If you create a Dropbox for, say, plagiarism tools, then you might not want to include that there. But just know that this option is there, and you should probably keep it as the default, because if you're creating an assignment, you're probably going to use it for a grade. And then here's another option that you may want to change. Do you want to show that to your students? Some faculty don't want their students to see. You may want to wait until you've graded everybody's papers. So that option is there, but it's automatically, as a default, made available to them. And then last but not least, this one, it's not checked. You can actually, for all of the assignments, students can go to the My Grade section, and it'll show them, okay, how did I do in comparison to the rest of the class? And so if it were me, I probably wouldn't have that checked, because do you really want to answer those tough questions? Why am I doing worse than everybody else in the class? But if you want students to see that, or maybe you're in a specific program and they need to step it up, you may want to click on that, and they'll be able to see that in their My Grades. And then last but not least, when you're creating an assignment, probably this is one of the most important sections, because I know a lot of faculty that kind of, this is what we see the most problems with. Sometimes we'll get calls at the help desk and students say, I'm supposed to turn in my assignment, but I can't find the Dropbox. And so typically what's happened is the availability is not set correctly, or someone has unchecked the default on make the assignment available. So this is one of the defaults you probably should not uncheck, which is here, make the assignment available. So when you keep that checked, that ensures that the student's going to be able to access it, regardless of the availability dates. So we always want to keep that checked. And I know some faculty panic, but I don't want them to see my assignment just yet. And that's okay. We still need to keep this default on, keep that checked. And then here is where you can actually limit your availability. So if you want this to display after a certain date, you can check that there. If you want it to display until a certain date, you can check that there as well. And so let's say I want this to display after summer classes start in June, and we'll give them a week to do this assignment, and we want that due at the end of the day. Or maybe, and then maybe, actually, classes start on the 1st. So we'll display that on the 1st day of class, and then they'll have a week until the 8th to complete that. So if I were to uncheck this box, then no matter what happens here, this assignment will never be available to students. So always make sure that's checked, and just know that if you don't want them to see it right then and there, you have the control in the availability here. And then last but not least, you may want to check track number of views. This allows you to see in the various reports that you can run in Blackboard. This allows you to see, okay, did the student, have they actually looked at the assignment? Did they ever click on it? And it'll provide you stats like that. So that's how you can create a basic assignment. Now, always make sure to hit submit. If I move away from this page or hit cancel, it will not save any of this. So just like for students, always tell them to hit submit. And then anytime you create your Dropbox, it places it at the very end. So if you have a ton of folders or a ton of items and you hit submit and you go to your page and you're like, where's my Dropbox? Well, it's probably at the very bottom. And so I'm going to go ahead and you can always move your items up or down. And so here is my Dropbox. Right now it tells me it's hidden from students, but it's going to be available after June 1st, 11:59 p.m. And so there's those instructions that we attached, and there's my instructions that I provided there. So that's what that looks like. Now I'm going to go back to my lessons area, and I'm going to use this introduction assignment. Dropbox. So now let's go ahead and look at the student preview, and that way you know what it looks like on the student end and what it looks like when they're ready to submit. And now you can do this with any of your assignments. When you go into that preview mode, you'll only see what's available to your students. So one example I want to show you, we created that Unit 1 assignment here in this folder, but it's not there because we told the assignments tool that we don't want that to open until the 8th. So in preview mode, if you want to make sure that something's not available, you can double check that. So instead, I'm going to actually go into a Dropbox that is open. So here's this introductory assignment. I'm a student. I've been asked to complete this assignment, and the way I can do that is just click on the title. And then here, whoops, I maxed out my attempts here. And actually, this is I'm glad that happened because I forgot to tell you how to edit an assignment. So if you, I actually only gave myself 2 attempts on this for submissions, and I think I maxed out my 2 attempts. So I can increase my attempts here. I'll say 5. Hit submit. So by the way, if you need to edit your assignment options, or maybe you want to change your availability dates, all you have to do is click the drop-down arrow by the link of the assignment that you want to edit and click edit, and it'll take you right back to those options. So I'm going to go back into student preview mode. Going to go to lessons, and now I'm going to try and turn in my introductory assignment. And so when I click on the title, this is what a student sees. If they've already made a submission, they'll actually see their submission there, or they can hit start new if you've allowed them multiple attempts. And so if they were doing this, if they were actually trying to submit for the first time, this is the first page they would see. And so it tells them when it's due, how many points, it shows the instructions again, and then it shows those attachments, instructions, an example, just to make sure that they're getting all the information. Now students can write a text submission here, or they can attach their own file. And so we can go there, attach a file, and they can attach multiple files. So it's not like they can only submit one. And of course, just like with your feature, they can hit do not attach. The difference here is that students have a section where they can make comments to you. So a student can make a comment there. I love the assignment. I hated this assignment. Thank you. They can write that there. So hopefully students don't get confused with the two. Every now and then you'll get a student that may put their actual submission in here, or they'll type their submission here in the comments, and that's not where they should put that information. You can have them type their submission in here, or you can have them attach the file. If you have a preference, most faculty love for students to attach a file because then it gives them an automatic preview, and I'll show you that in just a second. So if you have a preference, if you don't just want to like read a text submission, you want a nice preview of the paper, you might want to tell them to do only attach a file. And again, that's important for you to be specific in your instructions. So now I've attached my paper, I'm a student, and I'm ready to turn this in. Now, that's why I mentioned earlier, be specific in your instructions. Make sure you tell them to hit submit, because they could hit save draft, and what that does is it saves a draft of maybe their text submission up here, or a draft of whatever they've attached there. And you cannot view drafts. You as an instructor have no access to that, and there's no way you can push a draft through. So you want to make sure that students are hitting submit and not just saving a draft and say, well, I turned it in. They need to make sure and hit submit, and that is what puts it in the needs grading queue. So once they hit submit, it's important to note that everybody gets a submission confirmation. And so here's the number that they get, and they also get an email in their email. And so it tells them successful submission, and it gives them this confirmation number. So if your students ever have an issue and if they say, I know I turned that paper in, ask them if they have the confirmation email or this number. And if we have this number, we can definitely track the assignment down. But if they don't get that email and they don't get this confirmation number, then that means they didn't submit. Or maybe they moved away from the page and didn't hit submit, or they hit save draft, and that's why you can't see anything there. So just make sure and tell students, save those emails. They're super important, especially when it comes to grading time and you start wondering, well, why did I get a 0? And so here's where I wrote that text submission. There's also where I uploaded files as a student, and this is the little preview I was talking about. It looks more like a paper, and you can see if they followed like their formatting instructions. If they do just a submission text, you kind of, there's no way to format, and if you're having them learn some specific writing style like APA or something, then you might want to make it mandatory that they submit a document, so you can look at that as well. And so some of the things I can see here is, well, actually we're going to talk about what students see once their papers are graded. And so here I've got different attempts. I made attempts on different dates. As a student, I can come check and look at my attempts. So I can see that now my attempt 3, it actually tells me there. So students know if you place a due date, they know if their submissions are late. So this was actually due a long time ago, and I submitted today and it's late. So you'll be able to see that, and students can too. And then here are those Safe Assign reports that students can look at. Because I've submitted this file so many times, it has 100% on there. And so this is how students can also come back and check their grades. And so since we're on that screen, let's just talk about a few things here on students. So I'm going to go to the submission that actually has a grade. And so here, you actually have the ability to make marks on papers and put in comments. And then students can actually come and see all of this feedback that you provide for them. So here is a comment, the student name, that's the preview user, that's me, but that's where they put the comment when they submitted. And then this is the feedback from the professor. And so if the student wanted, they could start a new upload or do another submission, but they can definitely come and look at their grades here. And they can look at their different attempts and make sure that, have I submitted the correct one? Has it been graded? Do I need to contact my professor? Do we need to talk about our Safe Assign report because it's 100% match here? And so just know that this is all that students can see. So they're going to see the feedback to learner, and we're going to talk about grading next. And so I'm going to exit the preview, but I'm going to keep my preview user data. And so if you use this feature to test out what your assignments look like, or if you want to kind of test and grade one of the papers to get used to those features, make sure and click keep your preview user data, because that adds your preview user to the gradebook. And so now let's talk about grading. And so to start grading these, you want to probably make sure there's always students that turn in early. So you can start grading before the items are late, but you might want to keep those due dates in mind and not start entering zeros before the due date. So if somebody turns in early or it's ready to start grading because the due date has passed, there's 2 ways to do that. You can click on Needs Grading under the Grade Center. So you have 2 options there. When you click Needs Grading, you'll see everything in the course that has been turned in. And so you can use these filters up here to filter by assignments or discussion boards tests if you have tests that aren't auto-graded. So you can filter all that there. You can filter by date. But for the most part, you'll see your assignments and your students' assignments that have been turned in here. And so what you might want to do is, if you're like me, you probably don't want to jump around. You don't want to grade the Unit 1 assignment and then go and then grade Unit 2 because you're dealing with different answer choices. So what I like to do is you can either click on the user attempt here, or you can click on the drop-down menu of the item name, so the assignment. You can click Grade All Users or Grade with User's Name Hidden. So there's that anonymous grading. You can click either of those options, or you can just click on the actual attempt. And so here it also reminds you, oh, this assignment is late, and then you can take that into consideration when you're grading. And so let's go ahead and just grade this student attempt here. Actually, let me go back. We'll do, we'll we'll do the test student. And so it's saying this student submitted twice. And so because the default, I have it set to the last attempt, it's just showing me the second attempt. So there's multiple here, but I'm going to assume that the student just wants me to grade what they last submitted. So here is the student's paper. You can click on the pencil and make marks. Click done. You can also click the comment box and you can either just add a comment at the top and click post. Students can reply to your comments, so it can be kind of like a discussion if it needs to be, or you can, so you can put those on any parts of the page, so you can click close. Now this is going to change soon. I think we're due for an update in sometime in the summer, and so you're going to see that this page is going to now have more features, and it's not going to be called Box anymore. It's actually called Blackboard Annotate, and it's super cool because you can create like stamps to stamp papers. It's got more highlighting features, more different colors of markups, and it's just more robust than what we have now. And this one's kind of buggy. Sometimes it doesn't do what you want it to do. So just know that's coming. I won't spend too much time on this since it's going to change, but what really won't change are the features here on the right. So just know that you can actually expand the grading pane here. So click on that arrow and it expands that. So this is where you can write additional comments to students. So if you make markups or comments within the paper, you might want to tell students, please see comments in paper. And also, you can attach papers. So if you have a specific rubric that you maybe you mark up by hand, you can attach a file there. You can actually look at the editor. You can bring up the text editor. And the great thing about this feature here is that you can provide audio feedback to students. So you can insert a recording and you can either just do audio or you can also do your webcam. So that's a really great way to make your courses more engaging. Who doesn't love feedback? Who doesn't want to see their professor give them tips on how to improve or have their professor compliment their paper? So that's a really great feature. And it also kind of simplifies the grading process for you. You may just want to give a quick comment and maybe you don't want to type anything in there. So just know that that is available. It works best in Chrome. I never got it to work in Firefox. I've heard other people say that they can get it to work in there, but it works best in Chrome. So we just want to make sure everybody knows about that feature. In addition to that, you can add personal notes. So here where it says feedback to learner, this is what the students see. If maybe you detected some plagiarism or maybe there's some type of issue and you want to make a note, you can make a note and it attaches that to the gradebook there. And then you can you can actually download the submission if you wanted to, but it's going to give you a preview there. And so you'll only see previews for certain types of submissions. You won't see them for everything, but just know that, you know, your basic Word documents, PowerPoints, all of that, usually it's going to give you a preview here. But if they submit something that is not a supported format, you may not see it here. We get a lot of questions on that sometimes. So if you don't see a preview, you might want to try and download it here and open it up. If that doesn't work, then you can just let us know and it's probably not a supported file type. And so you can put your comments, mark up the paper, add grading notes if you need to, and then here is where, in this box that you can actually click on, you can place a grade in there. If you try and click and type something in here, that's for the grade book, so it's not going to let you edit that. But if you place your number in there, you can, and you're okay with your comments and whatever you've written there, now you can hit submit. And then just like I showed you with earlier, students are going to see that in their My Grades area. And then so what happened here is, since I graded that first attempt by the test student, now it's giving me the next assignment for the next person. And then I can just move through that. And then once I hit submit, I enter a grade for that, then it just gives me all of the introductory assignments. So that's why I like grading by category. And then just selecting that one assignment, that way I'm in the same frame of mind, and if I'm looking for specific answers, I'm not having to switch gears between Unit 1 and 2. I'm just going to grade all of the introductory assignments now, and then next I'll grade Unit 1, and so on and so forth. And so until you enter grades for everybody, then I don't think I had very many, so we'll just hit submit. I think eventually we'll hit the end of the queue. And then there we go. Now when I go to needs grading, there's nothing in my queue. And then, so just so you know, there is a way, if you go to your full grade center, there is a way for you to actually grade from your full grade center as well. And so here is that introductory assignment that I just assigned grades for. If I wanted to grade this from the full grade center and not go to needs grading, you could also do that here. So you can actually do grade attempts, and then it would bring up all of the attempts for that assignment, kind of like we just did now. And then you could go through and then put in your grades. And I'm going to go back to that full grade center. So it just depends. I like the needs grading because if I want to start grading early, there's always students that submit before the deadline, and it kind of lessens the grading burden after the due date. Another thing you might want to know about is, so here's that preview user account that I created when I entered in the student preview mode. And so if you keep your user data, you'll show up in the gradebook and you can test all of your assignment drop boxes. And so here, if you want, like, let's say you had a student, maybe you only allotted 2 attempts, and say a student messed up both of their attempts and they email you and they say, Professor, I'm trying to upload my paper, but it won't let me. Well, you could go to the student in the gradebook, you'd find the assignment, find the student's name, click the drop-down arrow, and then you can go and click View Grade Details. And so from the View Grade Details here, you can actually clear any of their attempts or ignore their attempts or view their attempts. So here, I could clear that first attempt, and then that would allow the student to have an additional attempt to actually do that third attempt. And so this is where you clear attempts or you can ignore. I usually do ignore just in case if something comes up later or the student says, I deleted their attempt. Well, if you just ignore it, it's still there, and then it allows the student to have another submission. So that's how you can do that. I'm going to go back to the Grade Center and use my breadcrumbs at the top there. One of the other features, if you click on the drop-down arrow by the actual assignment itself, you can grade all of that with the username hidden. The username's hidden. This is just the same option in the needs grading, but it's also there. And then one of the other things I wanted to tell you guys about is that assignment file download. So let's say you're going to be at a conference and you have a ton of papers to grade and you're not, maybe you have some time in the airport, but you don't want to be lugging around maybe your computer, or you'll have limited access to a computer. You can actually go into whatever assignment you want to download files for, click that drop-down arrow, and then select Assignment File Download. And so when you select that, it's really neat because you can then select what students you want to actually print submissions for. So for this, I'm going to say, you know what, I want to download everybody's submissions, even though I've already graded them. But let's say I hadn't graded them. And then here, you can, it'll ask you, do you want to download all the attempt files or just the last attempt? I'm going to say I want to just do their last attempt and then hit submit. And so this is how you can download all of those papers at once. So now it says that the assignments have been packaged. You can click the Download Assignments Now link. You can save that file. Sorry, my Zoom controls are locking everything. I gotta move them out of the way. And then so now I've downloaded that. It's in my downloads area. Did I open that? And then so there we go. There's my zip file. And so what this does is if the students submitted a text submission, it'll show you the text document there. But as you can see, these are Word document files that it downloaded. And because I made, I entered in a text submission and a file upload for most of these, that's why you see a text document. But like for instance here, there was no text submission, so there's not a text document accompanying that. So then from there, either you can do print all and send those to your printer and take those with you, or you can just view these offline. And then so for instance there, if you open a submission, you can make your own handwritten comments on that, and then you can always go back into the Grade Center and then enter in your grades afterwards. And just so you know, like for instance, where's a Dropbox? Here's one Dropbox. you can always, maybe if a student didn't turn something in, you can always click on that field and manually enter in any grade. And so you can tell that it's manually entered because it has that little orange triangle, versus when you grade inline, then you get just the plain numbers in there that you entered into the inline grading. We went over how to create and edit assignments. I showed you how to review things and grade assignment submissions. And we also went over how to download assignments and add grades to the Grade Center manually.